Hey gang, friendly neighborhood Joe Fisher here, Man Skirt Brewing. I'm going to do a little bit of kegging today, so I thought I would take you along for the ride. So yeah, I'm going to try to do this with one hand for part of it, holding the camera like this, and then we will switch to some sort of clamped apparatus. So we'll see how that goes. Good luck. See you there. So since we're in an old bank building, there's not a lot of room for storage, so we use whatever corners we can. So this is just kind of our front room with these nicely painted windows. Thank you, Art Across Borders. And I'm gonna get some kegs ready to fill. These guys are cleaned, sanitized, and pressurized, so they're ready to go. Okay, so we're gonna use counter pressure filling here. So the kegs, the empty, clean kegs are pressurized with carbon dioxide, and the brite tank here is also pressurized. You can see we're a tad over 10 psi right now. This is my my gas feed, so I'm going to move the line from here where it's connected to the carbonation stone, which was putting the bubbles in the beer, and we're going to move this over to here so that when we push gas in here, it goes up to the top and pressurizes the headspace. That pushes down on the beer with carbon dioxide gas pressure, which makes sure that there's no oxidation, and that pushes the beer out the bottom and into the kegs. And since the kegs have some pressure in them, the pressures will equalize, and then we can bleed some of the pressure out of the keg, so the CO2 that's in the keg will come out and it'll be replaced from the bottom up with beer. And that's the idea. It's very much the same as your homebrew counter pressure fillers. Blickman makes one called the beer gun, and yeah, so you may be familiar if you're a homebrewer. So hold on tight and we'll get started. As you can see, things are a little tight here in the Man Skirt Brewery. We are a pretty small brew house here, only about 550 square feet, and we managed to cram 3 7-barrel fermenters, a 15-barrel fermenter, 1 brite tank, and we have another brite tank on order that's going to go where these kegs are, which means I have to find a place for the kegs. Spraying everything down with a little bit of sanitizer. This is PAA, peracetic acid. It's a pretty standard brewing sanitizer, commercial breweries. It's a mixture of a mild acid, much like Star San, and hydrogen peroxide. So I'm just going to move this tube over, like I was saying. This is my gas feed here. So this is what's going to pressurize the headspace once I start kegging. These guys are filled with sanitized water. You'll see what that does in a minute. So now we'll start assembling. Sight glass, so we can see what the beer looks like. Oh, if you've never seen a tri-clamp before, this gasket, this is a silicone gasket. Each mating surface has a ring with a little channel in it that the gasket sits in. And then you've got a clamp. So, I often say the only difference between me and homebrewers is that I can do that with one hand. A little bit of practice, you know how it is. And then, let's see, how am I going to do this? I want to be able to do 2 kegs at once. And I think it's going to look, if I do this, I can do this. I guess that's okay too. Yeah, let's do that. Do it this way. So that's that. Then so this is my filling apparatus. I can't see you guys, so I'm hoping you can see this. This is a regular Sankey D keg tap. I've removed all the check valves from it so liquid can flow in the wrong direction from usual. And I just need to make sure that this guy can reach over here, which he can. So So the reason that I keep going off camera and reaching down is that that blue bucket I showed you before that I was hosing into, that is full of sanitizer. And that's just kind of a catch-all where I put all of the stuff I'm going to use to make sure everything's clean and sanitary when I need it. That guy. And then this guy. So the beer's going to come out here, get split, go to the 2 kegs. It's going to go down into the top here, go down the spear, and fill the keg up from the bottom. This here is normally where the gas gets pushed in to push the beer out, but we're doing the opposite. So the gas is going to come out here slowly, regulated by this valve here. So when we clip these down, if I open this, theoretically, we've got gas coming out. So that tells me that the keg is correctly pressurized with CO2, and we can start. So, before we do that, first thing that I like to do before we get started, first thing I like to do is make sure that there's no gunk at the bottom. I want to see clear beer in here. So I'm going to open this valve and I'm going to let the beer flow for a second until it's clear. Now we'll hook things up and get going. One important bit that I always have to remember is make sure that this valve is closed before opening anything over here, or I take a beer bath, just like you just saw. Well, see we have beautiful clear beer in here. It's moving into the kegs. So now I'll crack these valves open. And the kegs are now filling up. So all I have to do is wait for them to fill up. And how do I know they're full? I'll see beer in this little window here. So I hope you guys can see this. That is full of beer. So now we shut the valves. Valve. Shut this valve. Slow that down a little bit. And then switch to the next set of kegs. I will put you back into the clamps. Give them the clamps. Into the clamps here. Stay. Okay. Make sure that valve is closed, otherwise take that. He said for a much harder experience. Down, open it up. Now I'm going to get these 2 guys out of here. The spritz. And off to the floor I go. Okay, I'll open these, open the valve back up, next round. And the idea here is to regulate the gas flow coming out of the keg so that the beer has enough back pressure on it to keep the carbon dioxide in the beer. Because if you don't have enough back pressure, the CO2 will pop out of suspension and you just get a big keg of foam. So we want to fill them at a rate where we won't be here all night, but we also won't have a keg full of foam. I'll give you guys a little close up here. How beautiful that is. Saison flowing in. You'll also notice that the kegs are sitting on a little cart. It says capacity 500 pounds there. That's a jack cart so that I can stack them too high in the cooler. These half barrels are about 165 pounds a piece. We're pretty low tech here at Man Skirt. We don't have the room or the funds for a forklift, so everything has to be done by hand. So I try to make life easier on myself wherever I can. So it's a hydraulic lift. I can bring the kegs up to this height of the next stack and just kind of shove them in place. So how do I know when to stop, I hear you ask? I'm glad you did. If you look over here, this tube here with the blue lines on it, that's my sight glass. So up here, it's kind of hard to see, but that line says 7.5 barrels. So that's a very full brite tank. And if we go down here, it's very hard to see with a beer this light, but the liquid level is right there. And as we fill the kegs, obviously the liquid level drops. When we get down towards here, I can see I've got 5 gallons, and that's it. So once I get down towards the bottom, I'm going to switch to doing 1 keg at a time instead of 2. That way I don't end up with a half-filled keg. We're getting close to the end now. We've got about 5 gallons left in the sight glass. Keep an eye on this sight glass to make sure that there's no gunk getting in here. As soon as I start seeing any gunk, I'm going to close this off. Or when the level gets down close to the bottom, whichever happens first. Alright, here we go. Done and done. Now everything lives in the fridge until we drink it. Keep an eye out for more videos coming soon.